December 1989. A soundstage at Universal Studios. Steven Spielberg, 42 years old, is directing his latest film, Always. A romantic fantasy about a pilot who dies in a firefighting accident and returns as a spirit to guide his replacement and help his girlfriend move on. It's a personal project for Spielberg. A remake of a 1943 film called A Guy Named Joe. Spencer Tracy, Irene Dunne, Van Johnson. Classic Hollywood stars in a story about love, loss, and letting go. But today, Spielberg is filming a scene that means more to him than any other in the movie. A brief sequence featuring a character called Hap, an angelic figure who guides spirits in the afterlife. The role requires only a few minutes of screen time, a handful of lines, a gentle, ethereal presence. The actress playing Hap arrives on set in the early morning. 60 years old, still elegant, still luminous, still capable of commanding attention with nothing more than her presence. Audrey Hepburn, the woman who defined grace and sophistication for an entire generation. The star of Roman Holiday, Breakfast at Tiffany's, My Fair Lady. Winner of an Academy Award, recipient of countless honors, a living legend. And now, on this December day in 1989, she's filming her final scene, her last performance, her goodbye to the medium that made her immortal. She was my childhood icon, Spielberg later explains about casting Audrey. Having her in the film was like a dream come true. But this isn't just about a director fulfilling a childhood fantasy. This is about giving one of cinema's greatest actresses a perfect ending to her career. A role that honors her legacy. A character that reflects her spiritual journey. A final performance that captures everything audiences have always loved about Audrey Hepburn. This is the story of Always, Audrey Hepburn's final film. The movie that gave her a chance to say goodbye to Hollywood with dignity, grace, and the kind of ethereal beauty that made her legendary. 1989. Steven Spielberg is at the height of his career. E.T. Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Color Purple. Jaws. He's the most successful director in Hollywood. Master of spectacle. Creator of modern blockbusters. But Always represents something different. Not a high-concept adventure. Not a special effects extravaganza. Not a commercial calculation designed to maximize box office returns. Always is personal, emotional. A story about love transcending death. About letting go of the past. About finding the courage to move forward after devastating loss. The original 1943 film, A Guy Named Joe, starred Spencer Tracy as a bomber pilot who dies in World War II and returns as a spirit to help his replacement and guide his grieving girlfriend toward new love. It was a wartime romance, a meditation on sacrifice, a story about how love survives death. Spielberg updates the concept to contemporary times. The bomber pilot becomes a firefighting pilot. World War II becomes forest fires in the American West. But the core remains the same: love, loss, and the difficulty of letting go. The casting is crucial. Richard Dreyfuss as Pete, the pilot who dies. Holly Hunter as Dorinda. His girlfriend, who must learn to love again, John Goodman as Al, Pete's best friend. Brad Johnson as Ted, the young pilot Pete must train from beyond the grave. But there's another character, smaller but essential. Hap, the angelic figure who explains the afterlife to newly deceased spirits. The role requires only a few scenes, perhaps 10 minutes of screen time total. but it's the spiritual center of the film. Hap must be wise, gentle, comforting, someone who can make the audience believe in the possibility of life after death. Someone who radiates peace and understanding. Someone whose very presence suggests divine grace. Spielberg considers several actresses, established performers with the gravitas to handle the role's spiritual dimensions. But he keeps returning to one name, one face, one performer who embodies everything he wants Hap to represent. Audrey Hepburn, the actress who first captivated him as a child watching Roman Holiday. The star who defined elegance and grace for his generation. The performer whose screen presence seemed almost otherworldly, even in her earliest roles. I had admired her since I was 12 years old, Spielberg explains. She represented everything pure and beautiful about movies. There's only one problem. Audrey hasn't appeared in a film since Love Among Thieves in 1987. A made-for-television movie that represented the twilight of her career. Since then, she's focused entirely on her UNICEF work. Traveling the world, helping children, living a life of service rather than performance. At 60, Audrey has seemingly retired from acting, moved beyond Hollywood, found purpose in humanitarian work that feels more meaningful than entertainment. But Spielberg decides to approach her anyway, to ask if she might consider one more role, one final performance, a character who would allow her to bring her spiritual journey to the screen. Early 1989, Spielberg contacts Audrey's representatives. He wants to meet with her about a role in Always, not a leading part, not a substantial character, but something meaningful, something that would honor her legacy. The initial response is polite but discouraging. Audrey is retired from acting. She's committed to her UNICEF work. She's moved beyond Hollywood. She's not interested in returning to films. But Spielberg persists. He arranges a meeting, flies to Switzerland where Audrey lives, brings the script, explains his vision for the character, makes his case for why she's perfect for the role. The meeting takes place at Audrey's home in Tolochenaz, the house where she's found peace after years of failed marriages and career disappointments, the sanctuary where she's rediscovered herself through humanitarian work. Spielberg explains the character of Hap, an angelic figure who guides spirits in the afterlife, someone who helps the newly dead understand their situation, who provides comfort and wisdom during a difficult transition. The role is small, Spielberg admits, but it's important. The whole film depends on the audience believing in this character, believing that there's something beautiful and peaceful about death, that love continues even when life ends. Audrey listens carefully. She's always been selective about her roles. Even during her peak years, she chose projects based on emotional connection rather than commercial potential. She needs to feel something for a character before she can bring it to life. The role of Hap appeals to her for several reasons. First, it's spiritually meaningful. After years of focusing on humanitarian work, she's drawn to projects that explore deeper themes: love, loss, transcendence, the possibility of meaning beyond material existence. Second, it's age-appropriate. At 60, Audrey is too old for romantic leading lady roles. But Hap is ageless, eternal, a character defined by wisdom and compassion, rather than youth and beauty. Third, it represents a chance to work with Spielberg, one of the most respected directors of his generation. Someone who approaches filmmaking with seriousness and artistic integrity, not a commercial hack, but a genuine artist. Most importantly, the role offers closure. If this is to be her final performance, Hap would be a perfect character to end with. An angel, a spiritual guide, someone who helps others transition from the one phase of existence to another. I was flattered that Stephen thought of me, Audrey later says about the offer. And I was moved by the character. She's someone I'd like to be, someone who brings comfort to others. After considering the offer for several weeks, Audrey agrees. One more role, one final performance, a chance to say goodbye to Hollywood in a meaningful way. The decision surprises many of her friends. They thought she was finished with acting, committed entirely to humanitarian work. But those closest to her understand the appeal. This isn't about returning to Hollywood. It's about completing a journey. Summer 1989. Audrey prepares for her role as Hap. It's a small part, but she approaches it with the same professionalism that characterized her entire career. Reading the script multiple times, discussing the character with Spielberg, thinking about how to bring spiritual depth to limited screen time. The role requires a different kind of performance than anything she's done before. Hap isn't human, isn't bound by earthly concerns, exists in a realm beyond normal experience. How do you play an angel? How do you convey otherworldly wisdom without seeming artificial? How do you make the audience believe in the reality of a supernatural character? Audrey draws on her own spiritual journey. Her years of UNICEF work have deepened her understanding of human suffering. Her travels to impoverished countries have confronted her with death and loss on a massive scale. Her encounters with dying children have forced her to think about what lies beyond life. She's also processed her own losses. Her father's abandonment, her multiple miscarriages, her failed marriages, her friends who've died. The experience of aging in an industry that worships youth. All of these experiences inform her approach to Hap. This character isn't just a plot device. She's someone who understands pain, who's moved beyond earthly attachments, who can offer genuine comfort because she's experienced genuine suffering. Filming begins in Montana, the location for the forest fire sequences. Audrey won't participate in the action scenes, but she visits the set, meets the cast and crew, observes Spielberg's working methods. These forgotten stories deserve to be told. If you think so too, subscribe and like this video. Thank you for keeping these memories alive. The respect she receives is immediate and overwhelming. Everyone knows they're in the presence of a legend. A performer whose career spans 4 decades, whose films have touched millions of lives, whose very presence elevates the entire production. Richard Dreyfuss, the film's star, is awed by working with Audrey. She had this quality that you can't learn, he later observes. This natural grace that made everyone around her feel better about themselves. Holly Hunter, playing the female lead, watches Audrey carefully, studying her technique, learning from her approach to character development. Even in a small role, she found ways to make every moment meaningful, Hunter recalls. But it's Spielberg who's most affected by Audrey's presence. This is the fulfillment of a childhood dream, the chance to work with the actress who first made him fall in love with movies. I kept having to remind myself that this was real, Spielberg admits. That Audrey Hepburn was actually in my movie. It felt like a gift. The scenes with Hap are filmed on a soundstage at Universal Studios, an ethereal set designed to suggest the afterlife. Soft lighting, flowing white fabric, an environment that feels peaceful and otherworldly. Audrey's costumes are simple but elegant. White clothing that suggests angelic presence without being literal. hair and makeup that emphasize her natural beauty without heavy artifice. The goal is to make her look timeless, ageless, divine. The first day of filming with Audrey is emotional for everyone involved. This is history in the making. The final performance of one of cinema's greatest actresses. The last time audiences will see Audrey Hepburn on screen. But Audrey herself is remarkably calm, professional, focused on the work rather than the significance of the moment. She's always been this way, committed to the craft rather than the celebrity. She works through her scenes methodically, taking direction, offering suggestions, collaborating with Spielberg to find the right tone for each moment. Despite the role's brevity, she brings complete commitment to the character. She treated this tiny role like it was Hamlet, observes one crew member. Every line mattered to her. Every gesture was considered. The key scene involves Hap explaining the afterlife to Pete, Richard Dreyfuss's character. She must make the audience understand that death isn't the end, that love continues, that there's purpose in helping others even after your own life has ended. Audrey delivers these lines with perfect simplicity. No theatrical gestures, no overemphasis, just truth spoken with quiet conviction. The performance is subtle but powerful, understated but profound. She made you believe, Spielberg later says, not just in the character, but in the possibility that such wisdom and compassion actually exist. The role of Hap carries deep symbolic meaning for Audrey's career and life. This isn't just another performance. It's a culmination, a synthesis of everything she's learned, everything she's become. Throughout her career, Audrey has played characters who bring light into dark situations. Holly Golightly finding hope in Breakfast at Tiffany's. Eliza Doolittle discovering her own worth in My Fair Lady. Sister Luke following her conscience in The Nun story. Hap represents the ultimate expression of this archetype. A character who literally brings light to those in darkness, who guides others through their most difficult transition, who offers comfort in the face of death itself. The role also reflects Audrey's personal evolution. In her early films, she played characters who needed saving. Princesses in Roman Holiday, naive girls in Sabrina, innocent victims in Wait Until Dark. But Hap is different. She's the savior, the guide, the one with wisdom to share. The character reflects Audrey's own journey from vulnerability to strength, from needing protection to providing guidance. Her UNICEF work has prepared her for this role in ways that no acting class could have. Years of comforting dying children, decades of witnessing human suffering, a lifetime of learning that love is more important than fame, that service matters more than stardom. All of these experiences inform her portrayal of Hap. This isn't acting in the traditional sense. It's Audrey being herself, sharing the wisdom she's gained through pain and service. The angelic imagery is particularly appropriate. Throughout her career, Audrey has been described in otherworldly terms: ethereal, luminous, angelic. Critics have consistently noted her almost supernatural beauty, her ability to seem above earthly concerns. Playing an actual angel allows her to embody these qualities literally. To be on screen what she's always seemed to be in life, someone touched by grace. The timing is also significant. At 60, Audrey has moved beyond the vanities of stardom. She's no longer concerned with looking young or maintaining her romantic image. She's found peace in aging, in accepting the natural progression of life. Hap represents this acceptance. This understanding that there are different kinds of beauty, different sources of power, that wisdom and compassion are more valuable than youth and glamour. For Spielberg, casting Audrey as Hap represents his own maturation as a filmmaker. His early movies were about adventure and spectacle, but always is about deeper themes: love, loss, the meaning of existence. Having Audrey in the film elevates these themes, gives them weight and credibility. Her presence suggests that the movie is about more than entertainment, that it's exploring genuine spiritual questions. She brought something to the film that couldn't be manufactured, Spielberg explains. A sense of authentic spirituality, of real wisdom earned through real experience. The role also serves as commentary on Hollywood's treatment of aging actresses. Instead of being discarded or forgotten, Audrey is given a part that honors her legacy, that acknowledges her growth as a person and performer. Hap isn't a young woman's role. It requires the kind of depth that comes with age and experience, the kind of spiritual authority that can't be faked. Spielberg isn't exploiting Audrey's fame. He's utilizing her wisdom. Late 1989, Audrey films her final scenes as Hap, the last moments of her 40-year film career, the end of a journey that began with Roman Holiday in 1953 and concludes with Always in 1989. The final scene involves Hap saying goodbye to Pete as he begins his mission as a guardian spirit. It's a moment of transition, of letting go, of moving from one phase of existence to another. The dialogue is simple but meaningful. Hap explains that love is the force that connects all things. That death is not separation, but transformation. That helping others is the highest purpose of existence. Audrey delivers these lines with perfect stillness. No unnecessary movement, no theatrical emphasis, just truth spoken with quiet authority. The performance is minimalist but deeply moving. She understood that less is more, observes the film's editor, that the most powerful moments come from restraint rather than emotion. As the cameras roll for the final time, everyone on set understands they're witnessing the end of an era. Not just the completion of a movie, but the conclusion of a legendary career. Audrey herself seems aware of the significance. She takes her time with each take, ensures that every moment is exactly as she wants it. This is her last chance to get it right, her final opportunity to leave audiences with something meaningful. When Spielberg calls cut on her final scene, there's a moment of profound silence. Then spontaneous applause from the entire crew. Not polite acknowledgement, but genuine emotion. Recognition that they participated in something special. Audrey accepts the applause gracefully, but briefly. She's never been comfortable with excessive attention. Even at the end of her career, she remains humble, self-effacing, focused on the work rather than the accolades. In interviews promoting the film, she's asked about retirement, about whether Always truly represents her farewell to acting. "I don't think of it as an ending," she says diplomatically. "Just a pause. I'm grateful for the chance to work with Steven, to be part of this story. Whatever comes next will come." But privately, she knows this is goodbye. At 60, with her UNICEF responsibilities and her desire for privacy, she has no intention of making more films. Always represents closure, the completion of a remarkable journey. The role of Hap allows her to end her career on her own terms, not as a fading star taking any available role, but as an artist choosing meaningful work, not as someone desperate for attention, but as someone with something valuable to share. The performance also demonstrates her growth as an actress. In her early films, she relied on natural charm and innate elegance. But Hap requires deeper resources, spiritual authority earned through experience, wisdom gained through suffering. It's a masterful final performance, small in size but enormous in impact. A perfect demonstration of how less can be more, how restraint can be more powerful than excess. 1990 Always is released to mixed reviews but respectful attention. Critics appreciate Spielberg's ambition even if they question the execution. Audiences respond to the film's romantic themes, but find the pacing slow compared to typical Spielberg adventures. But everyone notices Audrey. Her brief appearance generates disproportionate attention. Critics praise her ethereal presence, her perfect embodiment of angelic wisdom, her ability to make the supernatural seem natural. If you want more untold stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. Your support means everything to us. Hepburn's few scenes provide the film's spiritual center, writes one reviewer. She makes you believe in the possibility of grace. The performance reminds audiences why Audrey became a legend, not just because of her beauty, but because of her ability to convey depth with simplicity, to suggest complex emotions with minimal means. More importantly, the role provides perfect closure to her career. A final performance that honors her legacy while acknowledging her spiritual journey. A character that represents who she's become rather than who she was. In the 3 years between Always and her death in 1993, Audrey focuses entirely on her UNICEF work. She travels extensively, helps children around the world, lives the kind of meaningful life that her portrayal of Hap suggested was possible. When she dies of cancer on January 20th, 1993, the obituaries note that Always was her final film, that she ended her career playing an angel, that her last performance involved guiding others through difficult transitions. The symbolism is inescapable. Audrey's final role prepared her for her own final transition. Playing Hap taught her something about letting go, about moving from one phase of existence to another. She wasn't just acting in that role, Spielberg later reflects. She was embodying something she'd learned through her own spiritual journey. That's why the performance was so authentic. Always stands as a perfect bookend to Audrey's career. She began with Roman Holiday, playing a princess who discovers the real world. She ended with Always, playing an angel who helps others discover spiritual truth. Between those two performances lies 40 years of growth. From naive ingenue to wise spiritual guide, from someone who needed protection to someone who provides comfort, from earthly beauty to ethereal wisdom. The role of Hap represents everything Audrey became in life. Someone who put service above self-interest, who found meaning in helping others, who discovered that true beauty comes from inner peace rather than external appearance. It's impossible to imagine a more appropriate final role for Audrey Hepburn, a character that honored her past while acknowledging her growth. A performance that demonstrated her artistic maturity while celebrating her spiritual evolution. Steven Spielberg gave his childhood icon the perfect farewell, a chance to embody on screen what she'd become in life. An angel. Someone whose very presence made the world a little brighter, a little more hopeful, a little more beautiful. She was my childhood icon, Spielberg said about casting Audrey. But by the time Always was released, she'd become something more. Not just an icon, but an inspiration. Not just a movie star, but a spiritual guide. The little girl who ate tulip bulbs during World War II had become an angel who comforted others in their darkest moments. The young actress who won an Oscar for her first major role had evolved into a wise woman who understood that love transcends death. Always was her final gift to audiences who'd loved her for 40 years. A last chance to see Audrey Hepburn on screen. A final performance that reminded everyone why she'd been so beloved for so long. Not just because she was beautiful, but because she was good. Not just because she was talented, but because she was genuine. Not just because she was a star, but because she was human. Hap was the perfect final role for Audrey Hepburn. And Audrey Hepburn was the perfect actress to play Hap. A match made in heaven. This is Audrey Hepburn, The Hidden Truth. From wartime horrors to Hollywood secrets, we uncover what they've been hiding for decades. Subscribe to discover the dark truth behind the elegant image.